Today's episode is brought to you by Agrarius, a South African investor specializing in agriculture. Agrarius founders originate from the farming community and have experienced how financial markets don't understand agricultural sector needs. They have thus fundraised from JSE investors to make money work for everyone. Agrarius offers a wide range of solutions, be it working capital, new equipment, new plantings and farm purchases. Whenever there is business potential, there is a way to make it happen. Agrarius, fair funding for agriculture. For more information about funding options, visit agrarius.co.za, a product of 274 Investment Managers. An authorized financial services provider, 31045.
Afternoon, Petri. Good to have you with us. We've got Petri de Beer here with us, and we're going to chat a little bit about the wine industry from an independent marketer. Am I correct?
A little bit of everything. I think that makes it a bit more difficult to kind of
Petri,
pinpoint down.
Please introduce yourself and please tell us what you do and how you arrived there.
So I'm Petri de Beer. So I arrived, what's it now, been 18 years ago. I arrived in the Cape from northwest, from a cattle farm, with the big dreams of making wine. Was a bit tired of the dusty flatness of the old West Transvaal, and studied winemaking and did my master's in wine, and then worked at various wine farms as an assistant winemaker and then winemaker. I had quite a big passion for more sustainable production of wine, but I very
Did you manage?
No, I missed it. So I developed quite a big passion for more sustainable agricultural practices, but while I was making wine, I realized really quickly that I was quite ill prepared for the wine industry as a whole. So I had very good winemaking knowledge, but that keeps you busy for about 3 months of the year.
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you got a tie put on you and you got shipped off to Johannesburg or Durban, and they say, okay, now you're going to sell some wine. And then the discussion becomes quite different around the kind of skill set that you need and your understanding of the wine industry. And I was lucky enough, I know there's a few courses that you can do about the wine industry, but while I was doing my master's degree, Prof. Nick Fink used to run a course on the wine industry and wine marketing. So I kind of had this in my head, like there's somebody that knows. I'll make a coffee date with him and ask him for some advice. So what I asked him is, I am realizing that I have a shortage of skills to navigate this wine industry. What would you suggest? And at that time, Prof. Nick Fink was department head for agricultural economics. So I think I was 22, 23, around, just finished my studies. In my youth naivete, I should have known what the answer of department head of agricultural economics was going to be. He said, the thing you're looking for is agricultural economics. This will sort you out. You will have a complete understanding of the wine industry once you're done. So went back to university.
So he was the marketing department.
I was just about to say, marketing department. There you go.
Yeah, there's a reason he gave wine marketing. He could sell it. So went back while working as winemaker, studied agricultural economics, finished that, did postgraduate. I'm now trying to finish a PhD.
Oh, wow.
So while in between these studies, I kind of switched over from winemaking to wine economics. So worked for Vinpro for a while as agriculture economist. And then beginning of this year, kind of decided I'm going to try and go it on my own as an independent consultant. So consulting across the wine industry, and then specifically realizing where the needs are in the industry on small producers, because the winemaking bug never left me. It's one of those things, once you get infected, kind of stays with you. No matter how bad it's going or how much money you lose or how bad the salaries are. Once you're in, you're in. It's one of those, I think you can see it a lot in the wine industry. It is quite a passion-driven industry. Because we not only working with the commodity, but also you still have this artistic side to it, this creation. So then realizing my 2 little barrels that I'm making and trying to sell, all of a sudden, if you don't have that infrastructure of a big cellar behind you, it becomes quite a different ball game. And then realizing how many of these small producers are out there, and seeing if we can kind of bring a few of them together just to make the whole process of launching a brand, having a small wine business a bit easier.
It's also not just small producers. There's also, you can buy bulk wine from a winery and bottle your own stuff.
Yes.
You don't need to own a farm.
Yeah, a lot of guys start out like that. That is, I think, probably the easiest way to get into it. Unfortunately, the wine industry is probably one of your most capital intensive industries to try and get into. If you're just looking at the raw numbers, and this is kind of where we lose a lot of the small producers. If you want to quit your day job and just do wine making, you're going to be a winemaker full time, you should have to be able to produce about 30,000 bottles a year, which is quite a lot. It doesn't sound like that much, especially if you're coming out of the wine industry and you're working with containers full.
Yeah.
But if it's just you and you're standing there in your garage with these pallets of wine, all of a sudden 30,000 becomes quite a mountain to overcome.
It's not a problem to bottle the 30,000, but to sell the
Yes.
30,000 is the problem.
Yeah. So you need around about, if you're going to make your own wine, you're going to do it full time. For the infrastructure, looking at about 5 million startup capital you need, and you need about $1 million cash to be able to get that production started. So it is quite an expensive thing. So we have a large number of small producers that have the passion for winemaking, but they aren't there yet. And some of them aren't going to reach that, but that's also fine. If it's a passion project for you, you just want to do it on the side. That's also a way to make wine. It's not a linear road you have to go down and say, okay, we're starting now with 1 barrel. I'm going to end with my 30,000 bottles doing this full time. For a lot of people, it is more of a passion project. Maybe the garagiste movement that's becoming quite popular. But you still need to sell those wines, and you have to bottle them, and you have to get your labels and the logistics behind that. So I set up a small company with Peter Badenhorst that used to be at Nederburg, winemaker. He's now also an independent winemaker, so he's also helping a lot of these producers. And we came together and we're trying to consolidate a lot of the services and just give a little bit of advice to the small producers. Even simple stuff that you take for granted, if you worked in the industry for any amount of time, like where do you get labels printed, or where can you buy corks? It becomes so kind of part of the natural production process. You don't even think that not all the people know this, have this information. So helping those small producers. So we've had quite good feedback so far.
Fantastic.
Yeah, still new, but growing fast, and we try to give a kind of full service through the whole value chain. So we assist the small producers from sourcing the grapes to technical advice at winemaking to giving them the right contacts for label design, marketing, because all of this takes time and effort. And if you are still working an 8-to-5 job, being able to go down to Cape Town to talk to a graphic designer to help design labels for you, it becomes almost an impossibility. And we're just trying to ease that process for the producers through kind of what we've learned ourselves, trying to do it.
So how many of these small producers are there? Well, with the Western Cape being the almost the only wine production area in South Africa left, apart from the Orange River a little bit, how big is that pool of small producers?
They're actually quite big. Like I say, so you can look up the actual figures. I can't remember what the newest seller registration on. That's just for the producers. That's not for your kind of buying in, producing wine guys. It was around about 2,000, I think, last time I looked. It could be less now.
So that's 2,000 people that are actually buying in grapes, crushing it,
Yes.
fermenting it, making a wine.
And you have so many more that are just kind of buying in the wine and producing the labels, because that gets run through a lot of the sellers. We'll have kind of house brands or bespoke labels and products being done through bigger sellers. But just to give you an idea of the makeup of the wine industry, so you've got your the big 3-4 producers, your Heineken's, DGB, Venimark, and Orange River, and if you do some of the Van Loferen and Namakwa, so you're about six big guys. They control about 60% of the wine market. So
And Heineken is not beer. Heineken just bought Distel.
yes, Heineken just bought Distel. So now Heineken Beverages
Yes.
has
it's
now
not beer.
incorporated Distel into
It's
the
important that you point that out because, people might miss that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's still a name transition. I see it hasn't taken off quite yet.
Yeah, people
are
still talk about
more
Distel.
comfortable with the Distel, but
Yes.
I think the marketing team is working hard on it to get people to associate Heineken with wine also. So those 6 companies control 60% of so you have about 40% of the wine industry that you have to divide by the rest of these producers. So we have a large number of small producers, but they don't grow to this kind of self-sustaining level on their own, being a wine farm or a brand that can employ 4 or 5 people. So that is something that the wine industry in itself is working very hard in getting new entrants into the system.
I think it's extremely interesting what you're doing because you find yourself quite a specific niche. And how's it going?
Like I said, we've got quite good responses back. We're now at we've been running for almost fully functional for almost 3 months now, and we have 5 clients we've signed up so far. So, and the more we get, the kind of easier it gets, the bigger stuff we can do, like doing wine shows, being able to send somebody up. I think especially the plan is next year, if we can do WineX in Johannesburg, that would be great. Because for a lot of these people, like taking out a week's leave, going up, paying 20,000-30,000 rand for a stand for one producer isn't really worth it. So kind of doing that whole marketing and logistics together, I think helps a lot. We've seen it not just with our own wines that we're trying to sell, but also with all the clients we've assigned.
Okay.
If I can ask a stupid question, you say that people's got an 8 to 5 job. It sounds like it almost sounds like it's like
A hobby.
an admin lady in an office who's got like a little side hustle going. Who's those typical people that's like making this wine on the side that's needing your services?
Yeah, describe your clients. You don't have to give names, but like, who are we talking about? What kind of people?
So it is usually people that have a love for the industry. So a lot of them are kind of industry adjacent.
Okay.
So you've got a few people working as suppliers or marketers, or they have some kind of connection to the industry. So a lot of them kind of try and make wine on their own. Then, of course, we have a lot of professionals, older professionals, like I said. The garagist movement has brought a lot of these guys into the industry. So it usually is a bit older people.
So it's people who've got a passion, or I want to make my
Yes.
own wine.
Yes, so to kind of live out that
Yes.
passion. And then obviously what we've seen lately in the industry, we've seen a lot of younger people trying to go outside of the traditional kind of
Yes.
winemaking ecosystem and path that you usually take, like working at a big cellar, building up there. And then if you look at a lot of the success stories in the industry before the Swartland revolution, I think a lot of people that aren't in the industry kind of know those guys. So they were really the first to try and do a little bit more on their own. So they kind of set the blueprint a bit. If you look before that, if you look at somebody like Lariche or Neil Ellis, the kind of, even Ken Forrester, they were people that worked or were part of the wine ecosystem for quite a long time, and then on the side kind of built their brand up until they could go on their own, where a lot of the younger guys kind of want to try from the outset to do it.
Because and again, if we make a statement that's not correct, you must please correct us. From what I've found and what I've seen is that you'll get winemakers that will go from one cellar to the next, and it almost feels like there's not loyalty under winemakers, and I can almost understand why, because let's say let's give a name.
You have an issue somewhere and you want to move on.
It's not just an issue, but you've got a wine cellar. Let's call it Worcester wines or Wellington wines, for that matter. I'm not even sure there's a wine cellar like that, but if there is, sorry, we're not infringing or anything, but they are running with their name, with their brand. They are not associating a particular winemaker behind that.
That is still very new for South Africa. We are still much more brand focused, so the cellar will be the main. So most people will know the cellar. We have started to get kind of our superstar winemakers slowly starting. So you have Agribusiness, Miles Mossel, Bayer Streeter, these types of guys that have name recognition, but that isn't the norm in South Africa yet. I know if you go someplace like California specifically, France runs much more like we do on brands, the chateaus, not the winemakers. Where in California, it's a lot more winemaker focused. So you'll see them kind of, the farm promotes the winemaker rather than the brand as such. And you have there the effect that if a winemaker moves, you kind of have a lot of clients and marketing move with them.
So it forces you to keep them.
Yes. Where like I said, it's much more towards the brand. So except for that one handful of winemakers, I think it's going to be very difficult for the general public to name name winemakers if they don't know them personally.
Yeah. But do you find that because we've got some friends that are also winemakers and stuff, and I know that they've always got a 10 or 15 barrels somewhere in the dark corner of their own. They make it for them.
Yes.
But it's almost like a not necessarily a nest egg, but almost like a fallback. Should the cellar close down?
Yeah, I think it's nice because the realities of making wine for cellar is you're making the cellar's wine, not your own wine. So that can sometimes feel a bit constricting. So having that 10 barrels is a lot of times just to get that creative outlet to make something that you want to make, even if it's not going to sell as well.
But those might often be a lot better than what the seller is actually making, because they can make their own stuff, whereas a seller might have a particular flavor or taste that they need to run with, because that is what they're known for.
Yeah, but that kind of circles back to the big thing. The winemaking is one thing, the wine selling is a whole different story.
I want to ask you, because I'm now sitting here thinking about the practical side of it. So if you're a 9-to-5 working at something else, or you are winemaking as a sideline as a winemaker, there's a lot of practical stuff here that must be very difficult, which is obviously where you're stepping in. For instance, as you mentioned, labels, but bottling and actually storage of those bottles. I mean, if you've only got a home, like, yes, your garage is going to be full, and moving that stuff to where you are selling it, and like what kind of if you don't have an advertising budget, who you selling it to? Are you selling it to your friends, or are you selling it in a wine distribution center, or at a special fair?
So
what's the story?
That is kind of one of the big difficulties if you're doing. It's easier if you're a winemaker, because then you're kind of quite close usually to where your barrels are, and you can just take a longer walk around the cellar, check on your stuff also. Although that is falling a bit out of favor, it is quite interesting. You can see it in the wine industry. When it goes better with the wine industry, they're more lenient to winemakers doing those kind of stuff. When it kind of goes a bit more difficult, they kind of want you to buckle down and
you can understand that.
So you've seen, and you can see it with the rise of the few winemakers that have launched their own labels. They kind of cut their teeth in the 90s and early 2000s, when it was kind of the heyday for the South African wine industry in the last couple of decades. So the sellers were a lot more lenient to these days. If you're working at a bigger seller, they will usually say that you can't do these types of stuff. The smaller sellers sometimes still let you maybe have a little barrel or two passion project, mostly just because it is more difficult for them to compete on direct salaries versus the bigger sellers. So they give you these kind of extra benefits that you are able to make a little bit of your own wine on the side, usually with some caveats about not interfering with the main
I would almost say, if I had a winery and I employed a winemaker, let's say I've got my brands, my flavors, my everything.
Your recipes.
If you want to call it that. But I would encourage them to tinker along the back, because you never know when they discover something or make something that is really well sought after, or could become something
But will they share it? That's always a difficult one.
Well, that comes back to business. If you pay people well enough, or if you cut them in on the deal, or whatever the story is, you'll make them a lot more loyal to you. Then you can start running with a winemaker brand versus just an estate brand. And again, if I'm wrong with that, please correct me.
No, it is, and you can see some of the bigger sellers do it. I worked at quite a big cooperative seller, Stellenbosch Vineyards, for a few years, and they produce a lot of supermarket kind of wines. You buy for under 100 Rand on the supermarket shelf. But what they also did is they set up kind of a small cellar where the winemakers could experiment a little bit. those wines that were produced there usually just only went to the tasting room or were sold to on consumption. So quite small, but like I said, there you can discover new things, you can learn new things, and you can see that with a lot of the big sellers have this kind of model that you have your high-end wines. So even the guys that are producing, you so old co-op, they usually have in the taste. You won't find it in the supermarket, but in the tasting room they usually have kind of a premium label
Yes.
that you can buy there. And that is one of the reasons they put that in place, is so you can use it as a way to experiment and see what works, and you can try new processes. And a lot of the times, those wines end up in the big blend because that's the nature of experimentation. You have about 10 failures for each success.
If it doesn't work, just put it with
blend
in
it.
there with a lot. Okay.
Yeah, and that's the great advantage of being a bigger seller.
Yes.
Like in that little cellar, we had many failures that luckily nobody will ever know about. But we had some great successes also coming out of that.
Yeah.
That you
Yes.
won competitions and became part of the lineup of the wines that are still. I left there now 6 years ago. They are still part of the SKUs that they're producing. So that's the big advantage of those types of sellers. The smaller sellers unfortunately don't have that luxury. You have to make each barrel, each bottle
Yeah, you
count.
make it count, yeah.
And then, to get back to the question you had about where do these small producers sell at the moment, that is actually becoming more difficult because we've seen a monopolization of the retail space. Everybody's very excited about the online selling space. But the big retailers have caught up quite quickly. So they are now also dominating that space, which used to be kind of an outlet for the independent guys. So we're falling back a lot on kind of word of mouth sales, face to face. So going to restaurants, that's still a big selling point, or
A focus.
big focus where these small guys can still sell is on consumption space, because restaurants also want to set themselves apart. So you can get the big guys will sponsor all the marketing material and put out work out the wine list for you and make sure that it gets sourced and you don't have to worry about it at all. But if you are a smaller restaurant, you want to set yourself a little bit apart, being able to have these wines to offer are quite a good selling point. So it takes a lot of footwork, and that's investing the time.
But ultimately the consumer is the one that needs to be educated, because it doesn't matter. You can be listed on the very best restaurant in the middle of Cape Town that's the hot property at the moment. But if that guy walks in and he doesn't recognize your name and he recognizes a Beierskloof Pinotage that everybody knows, why is he going to buy your bottle of wine?
Sorry, and I want to add to that. So he doesn't know about it. So how are you going to tell him? But even if he knows about it, you've got a very limited number. So if there are 20 bottles and suddenly everybody wants it, but there are no
Then you
more.
double your price.
So tell us about the supply and demand. And
So that is in South Africa. I think in the Western Cape, they always say that they think the world ends at the Dewald bars.
And the Cedarburg.
Yeah, but it is really, you get into that mindset, you think that the whole country kind of runs like the Cape Town metropolitan area, where everybody is a bit more educated towards wine. It's a bit more ingrained in the culture. But South Africa is still out and out a beer drinking culture. So that education, there's
a big job to do.
The very big job to do around wine education and the integration of wine into our culture. We have somehow managed through inadvertently and through very specific bad decisions that's been made long ago in the past. We have been producing wine for so long, but we have failed, or not properly, put it that way, of integrating wine into the broader South African culture and zeitgeist, where it becomes kind of part of the identity of being a South African. If you look at the Europeans,
Yeah.
it is really part of their culture, drinking wine, where most South Africans can take or leave it. Doesn't really matter to them. So
I know some who it matters a lot to, but you have a point.
yes, so it makes those, especially for the lesser known people, aren't willing to take a chance on something new, because they are only exposed to a very limited number of wines, and when they are going to make the decision, they're not really open to experimentation.
Also, not that, it's also about cost. If this, you can buy 2 cases of beer versus 1 bottle of nice wine.
Yes.
It will go a little bit further.
And that's also where that kind of cultural integration becomes very important, because that justifies that premium that people will pay. If it's not just for a party and a good time, they are willing to pay more for a certain beverage. Where if it's going on cost, wine will lose every time. It's a very inefficient way to make alcohol. Most of it's water.
Yeah.
So where it's much more efficient if you're going beer or some other spirits.
And
Yeah.
how big an impact happened just before COVID? You had a big craft boom of especially gin, a little bit of rum, a little bit of brandy, and then obviously beer.
Yes, so the thing with the craft boom was that it affected the faster producing beverages. So producing beer and gin is very quick. I think it's 2-3 months, and it's not beholden to a certain season. So you can do it
Yes.
whenever. So that kind of was a big advantage for them. And you can do it on a smaller scale. Distillation does cost you quite a bit still, but you can produce smaller quantities. Where with wine, a lot of your infrastructure and equipment is set up for larger production. We have now some garagist sized stuff being produced, but you're still looking at 500, 600 bottles you have to do at a time in your production. Where beer, those home brewing kits, you do 20, 30 liters at a time. And even your small distillation, you can get to quite small volumes. So that helped them. And then I think the big thing that kept it from spilling over more towards you talk now about brandy. So the brandy and the wine is the way that our excise system is set up. So excise has always been quite an important part of the wine industry.
That's tax.
Yes, so the tax you pay on alcohol and wine specifically. The positives of that is because it has always been a big kind of money generation thing for the government. They've always been kept tabs on it since we started making wine in 1659.
Yeah.
We can track the amount of vineyards and the wine produced for the last 350 years in this country because it's always been taxed. There's always been excise on it. But it does make it difficult for smaller people to come into the system because of the way it's set up, especially with brandy and spirits. If you're not able to sell it immediately, there's an aging process that goes into it with brandy. You need a lot of capital to be able to cover your excise duties before you even sell your product. And that keeps a lot of producers out of the system.
I remember hearing how incredibly onerous the excise costs are.
Yeah, I believe
on everybody. But if you are a small person trying to do that, and they watch you like a hawk.
I believe close to 50% on a bottle of alcohol is tax.
Yes. And if you're doing spirits, it's at least with the wine, if you are producing, you're only paying excise as you're selling the wine. It's still a lot, but you have to, as soon as it moves out of the warehouse to be sold, you have to pay the excise. But with
Yes. Ek wil amper gaan.
But with distillation, you have to pay that upfront. So
Yes.
you have to put down the cash.
Oh.
Yes.
And what you said with brandy in particular, because you're aging it, do you still need to pay as the brandy is aging, or?
No, you pay as soon as you take it out of the barrel. So as you're bottling. So with wine, you're paying as soon as it moves out of the warehouse to the retailer. So then you've got about usually 60 or 90 days kind of lag between when you have to pay and when the money comes in. Where with brandy, it's as soon as it's bottled.
Okay. So if it sits in while it's aging for 10 or 15 years, you don't have to pay for
You
it.
don't have to pay. Okay. But the things, your capital investment is so high on
because it's got to sit so long. So you've
And I think that's why the brandy didn't, because we thought that maybe with the gin, because it's quite close to brandy. You're one step away from producing brandy if you're already producing gin. We thought that the impact of the craft industry would be a lot bigger, but we underestimated that kind of capital investment of the aging process. It becomes just unattainable for most small producers. You're producing 8 years, every year you're producing and putting money in before the first money comes out. But that's a very bad investment.
Indeed. I go back to my question about, okay, so you are a winemaker, but like a enthusiast. It's something that you do as a sideline. You have now made your wine. Now it needs to be bottled. How do you do that if you've got a small batch? Then tell me about small batch bottling. How do they do that?
So if you're very small, let's say 1 barrel, you would almost consider doing it by hand. Because starting up the machines, if you run a very efficient bottling line, you're still going to lose about 50 liters just to start up the machine, get through the pipes and all of that. So you want to work on minimum volumes. If you're running a big bottling line, like Paarl Valley Bottling that's down here, or you're running one of the big Distell lines, for those big machines, it's not out of the norm to lose up to 200 liters of product with the startup and the shutdown of the machine. And that's almost a whole barrel worth of wine.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you might be better off just to invite all your friends and just drink it.
So there are smaller bottling lines. So what we would usually do is you kind of club together, because also getting the guy with their truck to come out, so you have mobile bottling lines, and start up, you kind of pay them for the day.
Yeah. Because also now my wine is being bottled first. My wine is still in the pipes, which has got to be cleaned, which is part of that. It's got to be wasted.
You just get your friends to bring a glass.
And then he's still got to go through the system, and then the next guy's got the same problem.
So there's going to be a little bit of number 1 in the bottle with number 2.
Yeah.
No. You'll wash it out.
Yeah, you wash it out, but the first and the last guys usually lose the most. So you try to do the biggest volumes first and last, and then in between,
Okay, it makes
you
sense.
run the smaller.
All right, so now you've bottled your wine. It's standing there. They're either 50 bottles or 500 bottles or 5,000 bottles. They are what they are. Now what?
So as soon as it's bottled, you have to label and sell it, because you're paying storage fees. And if you're doing because you're not paying per box, you're paying per pallet area that you take up in a store. So you have to sell your wines as quickly as possible if you can, or else those kind of storage fees become just so much. If you have, just to give you an idea, it costs me for one pallet size storage, you're usually looking at about the profit of 2 boxes a month. You're giving up for each pallet you're storing. If you're doing a wine bottle of about 150 rand a bottle you're selling at.
So you could actually end up with a negative number
Yes. So
That
you
could, you
don't-
probably will.
if you
So-
don't sell your stuff.
So I have to sell a minimum of 2 boxes of wine each month just to cover the storage,
storage.
cost of it. And yeah, so it does add up quite a
Okay,
lot.
so now you've labeled and you're storing. Now tell us about how you sell. You said restaurants. What else?
So restaurants, independent wine shops, you'll see even the big guys, the most effective way is, and I've met some of the more well-known independent winemakers in Stellenbosch, in Cape Town. You see them walking with a backpack and say, "Oh, what are you doing?" It's like,
We're selling
"I'm
wine."
selling wine." It's like, but you have friends, and this is the way you sell wine. You load your backpack up with wine or your car boot, and you drive to places and you sell it. If you're not able to produce the volumes needed for a retail store, which is usually quite a lot, we're talking 10,000 bottles, 20,000 bottles, you have to guarantee minimum before they consider stocking you. You have to load up your backpack and you have to go and sell door to door. And you have,
So how many boxes per month do you need to sell to cover for that tasting that you've got to give at the restaurant? You can't just walk in there and say, "I've got a nice label." You must.
you taste it. It takes up quite a big chunk at first. You give away a lot of wine. I don't think people realize how much wine you actually have to
Give away.
give away
it's
before
like the proof of the pudding is in the eating thereof. You wanna sell something, people must taste it and go, "Oh yes, I like it, A, and B, I'll pay that amount for it."
Yes, so you have to, and that's where wine shows help a bit, because then you can open one bottle and pour for 20 people tasting. It's not just one restaurateur you're
Yes.
pouring for, and then
Or you pour for the guy at the restaurant, he says, "No, I don't like it, take it away."
yeah. So
If I give you a magic wand and I say, "Petri, here, how will you fix this? What would your wish be to fix the scenario?" Because the it's not that there's not enough product. There's enough product. We need to get it sold.
I think the fastest and easiest way is to kind of relook at the legislation. I've done some work in Europe specifically, where they have a lot of small producers, and I think that's where we differ a lot from the European countries, where this has been integrated in their kind of culture. When they kind of formalized their wine industry, everybody was making wine in their backyard, where we've always been focused on export. So we've always had big sellers that produce and export. We don't have uncles making wine in their garage as a kind of, this is how it's always been. So how a lot of the European legislation works is, if you're producing below a certain number of bottles, I think it's now 5,000 bottles, you are kind of exempt from a lot of the taxes. Like, you just declare this on your income tax statement each year. You've sold this wine, and we, with your normal taxes, will tax you there. It's not a separate process, and that encourages a lot of small producers to kind of come into the industry, where you have massive amounts of small producers. I was fortunate enough to work for a few months in the Czech wine industry, which I don't think a lot of people know actually exists, but they have about 25,000 hectares of wine, and they have about 10 times the amount of producers that we have, because they have this culture of self-producing of wine, where almost everybody produces a little bit of wine by themselves. So you can go into a small village in their wine area, like a town like Wellington's size, and there would be 300 guys producing wine
Wow.
just in that town.
And how do they sell it?
They sell it to their local community. They have very strong outlets directly to the customers. It is something that's changing. They're having their own issues with the retail sector and monopolization, so they're losing that. That's something that their government is actually looking at quite seriously, because for them it's not just an industry, it's also kind of a cultural heritage, how to preserve it, because you are losing that
Of course.
direct sales where you would go, and you still get a lot of the older people won't buy wines from the shop. They know Uncle so-and-so on the end of the street, he does a few bottles. So if you want wine, you walk down there and you pay him. Usually there's not even a fixed price. It depends on how much he likes you, what the price of the wine's going to be. And you buy locally like that. So just if we can just get more entrants into the wine industry, and the easiest way would be through really looking at our legislation, looking at something like a sliding scale taxation. We already monitored well enough through SARVIS that it should theoretically be possible to implement that in the wine industry.
And even something like a liquor license can take you 2 years
Yes.
to get a liquor license.
And if you're doing a production license, so how licensing works is if you want to produce wine, you need a production license. If you want to...
That's not farming it. That's the wine that's the wine cellar.
The cellar. If you want to put up cellar, you need a production license. Then if you have a production license, if you want to move it to a warehouse or you have a contract with Spar, you want to move it to the DC, you need the distribution license. If you want to sell it directly, you need a liquor sales license. Even if you're just going to export, you need an export license. So if you are a wine farm that's producing your own wine, you're selling locally and you're selling overseas, you need at least 4 different liquor licenses to be able to do that. And
It sounds like like small farmers, small wine producers have got such a massive mountain ahead of them with all these challenges you're mentioning, that it's like, you're doing this anyway? It must be crazy passion to do all of this.
And then we've got a friend who bought a house, and then he had a couple of rows of, I've got a vineyard now.
Yes.
And we're going to make a couple of bottles of wine.
So you can technically make your own wine and drink it yourself without anybody. But as soon as you want to try and move or sell it, you have to inform the government with quite a few forms about what you're trying to do there. So just easing that process, and especially something like a production license, is you have to set up your cellar first. They come and inspect it. It's like, I don't know if you've ever tried and applied for a firearm license, but it's almost the same process. You have to put it in your safe, and then they come and inspect it. And
then they say no, and then you sit there with a safe you can't do anything with.
Yes. And now, but imagine a safe costing you 5 million rand. So now you put it in, you're waiting 6 months to a year. If you're a small producer, and that's one of the main...
And you're not allowed to produce yet at that stage.
No.
You can't take one bunch of grapes and crush it in your zinc and put yeast on it.
And that's... They're always hounding the industry. Why we don't have small producers, why we don't have new entrants, why we are struggling so with transformation in the industry. But it's so difficult for anybody to enter the industry, because our whole system was set up for big co-op sellers that produce big volumes to export. So it was never designed for small producers. So we're going to have to get a complete rethink about how our industry's kind of legislative frameworks are set up.
We were talking about how difficult it is and how expensive it is, and how you cannot, you cannot start until that 5 million that it's costing you. That's where we were. So how expensive...
No, you can start.
Yeah, you can just...
Once you need to spend the 5 million.
That's what I'm saying.
Then you need to get the licenses, and then you can start. So
yeah, it usually takes you, if all your paperwork's filled in correctly, it'll take you a year. And you know how government paperwork and bureaucracy works. There's probably some where you messed up and you used the red pen, or you didn't sign on the right space, and now it gets sent back, and then another 6 months.
How many people, and honestly, how many people just go ahead and do it and then pay the fine afterwards?
Unfortunately, it's kind of set up. If you're a small producer, you can't really afford the fines. For the big guys
Yeah.
that can afford the fines, they're not really having these issues surrounding cash flow. And you'll also see that a lot of the newer, younger, up-and-coming wine farms and wine brands, there'll usually be some private capital behind there just to kind of get that back. You have a lot of examples in the wine industry where the winemaker kind of does the winemaking, and there's some industrialist kind of financing the whole thing.
And how many people are out there, and I'm pretty sure you must have come across some, that jumped into this head over heels with this romantic idea of I'm going to be a winemaker, and then you are faced with this?
A lot. There's quite a few of them. I think a lot of them fall by the wayside, usually after a year or two. And then you have a few pallets of wine for the rest of your life. You kind of drink on your own to try.
Quietly in the corner while you cry into your glass.
And a 5 million rand investment you can't do anything with.
So what we've seen is, because the wine industry is currently experiencing a bit of a downturn, global consumption levels are going down. We are losing some hectares, also vineyards. There are bigger sellers that are starting to revamp themselves to try and accommodate smaller producers. There's still some legislative grey areas about kind of a co-op of 5 or 6 winemakers together. It kind of makes it a bit more difficult, and SARS doesn't really like it, because then who's responsible for what, and if something goes wrong. And
I've got another scenario I want to sketch, and carry on.
So they are trying that. I know you have one that's been running for a few years in Karabip Winecraft, just outside of Kuils River, and you've now got Simon's Vlei that's also running on the same model. They've started now, I think, 2 years ago, where they try and use the existing infrastructure that we already have that's being underutilized for smaller producers. But like I said, our legislative environment is still such that you can do it. SARS doesn't really like it that much, so it's a bit difficult. It's not streamlined at all yet.
A couple of years ago, I was at Weltevrede in Bonnievale. This was Weltevrede.
Yes.
And they were busy. At that stage they were building wineries in containers and shipping it up into Africa. So basically, I think it was a 40-foot container, and that would be like a set up winery for small producers, and they would build this, and it would ship up into Africa and for startup things like this. Okay, I'm not even sure if they still do it. If they still do it, it would be cool to see. I still remember I tried to pitch them a video at that stage. Might have to take that one up. But if, let's say, you buy one of those things, you've got the winery, it's movable, you can put it in the back of a truck if you really want to. Now, I need my wine made. I've bought my grapes, I phoned Petri, bring your winery. You come and park there by me for a couple of weeks, put it into my barrels in my garage, and you leave. Do you think that can work?
That can work, but like I said, your licenses are
I'm seeing lots of red lights.
are fixed to a specific spot, so where it's produced. It is.
Yeah, but it will be fixed to your address where you live in Kuilsrivier. Nommer 99 Tuinstraat and...
Yeah, but you can't produce in a suburban area. It has to be zoned for industrial production.
Listen, they've sewn it up so tight that...
Yeah, no, it's like I said, we underestimate how big a portion of excise, how important it is for our government coffers, and for how long it's been so. So our industry has been set up from the beginning, like very tightly sewn up, no loopholes for production on your own. So with all of these rules in place, it does make it quite difficult. And I think there's always the argument for kind of misuse of alcohol. But if you look at where those kind of ales and problem beverages originate from, it's not the guys producing
Small
2-3 barrels of wine. It is coming through big industrial guys kind of trying to circumvent a lot of the legislation. And if you look at, we have kind of a blueprint for this. A lot of the beer producing areas in South Africa that produce traditional beers, it is produced on a small scale, consumed on a small scale. That's not where the problem lies. It's not, and there you can see how a beverage can become kind of part of tradition and culture and how it gets integrated into a society in a relatively responsible way. It's not these beers that get produced at home that are the big problem.
It's full of methanol and
I think it's been incredibly interesting hearing about all these challenges and the fact that you have set up a business to assist these people. It's clearly necessary. And, best of luck. What are you looking, when you look down the road, you're thinking about new clients and helping clients. What do you foresee with your business?
Like I said, we've had some good feedback. And I think as soon as we can get that critical mass where we can start doing larger kind of conglomerated marketing and logistics, it will enable a lot more smaller producers to be added on to help with this whole process.
Okay.
But in the meantime, I think for the industry as a whole, there's still a lot of challenges for small producers to enter the industry.
You have starkly outlined those. I don't know if I missed it. Did you mention the name of your business?
No, I think we missed it at the beginning.
Missed that.
Yeah, so the business name is the Tiny Wine People.
The Tiny Wine People.
Yes.
That's such a cute name. What did you say? It's like the miniature people drinking wine. No, it's the small wine.
Yeah, so it is a business to help small.
The Tiny Wine People. That's so lovely.
Small wine businesses.
Okay, I think we've kind of got to the end of it now, and we have this tradition. Somebody previous to you on our podcast is asked to leave a random question for the next person. And this is now your turn to get some random person's question for you.
Okay, this random question we got at the Blueberry Summit, so it was very much directed towards blueberries, but it could go for any industry. So, where do you see your industry in the next 5 years? And give an example.
So in the next 5 years, I think we are slowly but surely approaching an equilibrium. Unfortunately, it's kind of a bottom equilibrium, but I think we will see less vineyards being pulled out. We will see kind of a stabilization a bit more in the industry. There are going to be some challenges still ahead, especially with consumption of wine as a product, that will necessitate some changes in our industry. I think a lot of the kind of bottom end products will start to fall away as they become less profitable, but that will force us to focus more on the premium production, which is, I think, going to be ultimately good for the industry to kind of have more of that high-end product being produced in South Africa.
Do you think there's enough appetite for higher-end wine?
We have actually seen, with all the the loss in sales and the loss in consumption, that high end is actually still the consistently growing end. Very specific areas, especially something like your sparkling wines. We've seen very strong growth there. And I believe on the higher end, especially in Africa, there's still a lot of room for growth there. And we can see it by the foreign investments being made in our industry. I think something we've now talked a lot and had some very, I think, a bit of a somber outlook on it, but I think we sometimes forget our own advantages that we do have. And I just tell the guys always, look at who's investing here. You see the French investing, you see American companies investing. So they see something that I think sometimes we overlook. So there is definitely still potential for growth. It's going to be a bit more targeted growth. So I don't think it's going to be an overall on all sectors, but there's definitely still possibility for growth in the industry.
Very, very interesting. Thank you so much for joining us, and the very best of luck with your enterprise. I think people clearly are going to need your help, and we'll follow how you go. So,
but also, if you think about the services you offer, it cuts across quite a wide, because there's still people coming into the craft market and even into the craft beer. The knowledge you've got on, like for instance, labels, bottles, input things, could assist those people also. So it's not just one.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't discriminate.
It must go down the same hole.
Yeah, if you have a beer or cider, we're more than willing to help you also. We're not limiting ourselves to wine. Like I said, the challenges do cut across a lot of the beverage industries.
Wow.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Very, very interesting.